Alright, I got a question for all of you. First, what is Dead Space 3? But secondly, why is it the Twilight of video games?
Any cold, wet thing, I don't really...
Alright, I better be careful with what I say next or I could end up burying this entire video before it even begins. Look, this game isn't anywhere near as bad as those movies. That was hyperbole, but it does share one awkward element.
Ellie.
Yeah.
I love you. You know that, right?
Upon replaying this game recently, I found that it really didn't feel totally like a Dead Space game. I remember playing this in 2013 when it released all those years ago, and honestly, I initially enjoyed it. I mean, the series' polished gameplay remained intact, but that's about all this game really carried forward with respect to the previous games. With the remake literally right around the corner, like 1 week away, I wanted to go back and play through the Black Sheep of Visceral Games trio. I'll tell you right now, I did not enjoy a lot of this game. In fact, I don't know how I ever did. Dead Space 3 takes on that ambitious task that every developer struggles with, and that is finding a fitting conclusion to a narrative that has spanned several years and spin-off material. This game was slated to be the last game to wrap up the story of Isaac Clarke and his galaxy-spanning adventure to save humanity from ungodly monstrosities. I'll say that they accomplished this goal, perhaps in the worst way possible, but hey, they did it. Look, I'll be straight up saying that the ending here is atrocious. No, not the game's original ending, but the paid DLC ending that provided the real ending, quote unquote, which is completely scummy. However, Dead Space 3's narrative felt forced, messy, and at times cringy. It's a game literally built around coincidences and luck that focuses on uninteresting characters and cringy dialogue. I don't even want to get into the Twilight-like love triangle. I mean, I will, but still. Aside from the story though, they just made some really puzzling decisions that felt completely out of place in a Dead Space game. Not only did they add co-op to a franchise previously driven by a single player experience, but they pushed it onto players as the main way to play through their adventure. Sure, you wouldn't miss out on any of the main story beats, but you sure as heck were missing out on some important details that without them would make characters feel completely hollow and make some scenarios jarring. I and many others attribute the failure of Visceral Games' last title to their corporate overlords.
It wasn't me!
EA had been continuously pushing Visceral to add more industry standard practices like multiplayer, and that was so that the games would appeal to a wider audience, hence selling more copies. Well, it's safe to say this really didn't work out in their favor because Dead Space 3 sold 20% less copies than Dead Space 2. If you add in the microtransactions, it's really easy to see why it was so criticized by fans. This of course resulted in the eventual closure of Visceral Games and the series being shelved. Look, this game isn't entirely bad, alright? There are definitely some improvements that added to the series in a meaningful way. These include their new weapon crafting system, the wider explorable areas, and that visceral combat that people came to love. It's just crazy to see how it all went wrong so fast. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive into the game and talk about all the aspects, both good and bad. Obviously this means heavy spoilers, but the game came out like 10 years ago, so I don't even know if you can call them spoilers at this point, but regardless, you are warned. Okay, we'll start off with a recap, because Dead Space has an incredibly vast amount of interesting and well thought out lore that backs Dead Space 3. These games revolve around ancient artifacts known as markers. These double helix relics are of extraterrestrial origin and are sought after by the Church of Unitology to be worshipped. These artifacts, however, are a source of evil, emitting a signal from deep within space that affects organic beings on a psychological level. Isaac first stumbles upon these very artifacts in 2008's Dead Space, originally sent to the Ishimura, a planet-cracking mining ship, to do minor repairs only to find the ship abandoned. After an attack on the repair crew, Isaac is separated and journeys into the ship to find his wife, who just so happens to be stationed on board, and then secondly uncover exactly what the heck is going on. It just so turns out that the ship's captain was a unitologist in search of a marker found on the planet below. The uncovered marker began causing paranoia and panic among crew members. During the chaos, death would ensue. The marker causes necrotic tissue to reanimate into grotesque forms, leaving what's rest of the crew to be picked apart. The horror elements were really well thought out and effective in the first game. While Isaac is a mute character here, his search for his wife is compelling. The marker begins imprinting on his brain, causing him to have severe hallucinations, leading to the twist that his wife has been dead the entire game, despite us interacting with her throughout the game. This is a result of the marker's hallucinations tricking him. An advisor that landed with Isaac as part of the repair crew pulls a Burke from Aliens on us as she aims to retrieve the marker for delivery to Earth, despite her acting like she's trying to help us the entire game. Isaac follows her down to the colony below where she is killed by the hive mind, a giant insectoid creature. Isaac kills the hive mind and destroys the marker before boarding a shuttle and leaving it all behind. Dead Space 2 picks up 3 years after the events of 1 with an ailing Isaac suffering from marker-induced dementia aboard the EarthGov space station known as the Sprawl. He's been kept in an asylum where staff have been picking his brain for marker plans, something that was imprinted on him during the events of 1. He's pulled out of the asylum as a rude awakening ensues while the dead rise up around him. A new necromorph outbreak is well underway. Isaac traverses the station, colliding past with Ellie Langford, a heavy cargo pilot, and Nolan Strauss, a victim of the marker influence much like Isaac. These two people play a pivotal role in helping destroy the second marker and putting an end to the necromorphs. At the last second, Ellie swoops in to get the lonely engineer, both narrowly escaping as the fruits of their labor meet an end. These first 2 games did a considerably great job at world building and providing an uneasy atmosphere. The unfolding narrative produces clever twists, solid characters, and extensive lore that stretches really far beyond the story in a believable way. The political and religious themes are represented well here, even if they do feel a bit contrived at times. The second game left the story open for all kinds of possibilities, which leads us to Dead Space 3. Now, unlike the games that came before, we start 3 in the shoes of Tim Kaufman, 200 years prior to the events of Dead Space 3. A soldier of the SCAF, the Sovereign Colony's armed forces. He's tasked with retrieving an object called the Codex from a downed gunship and making his way down a mountain. Once there, he is confronted by Mahad, a commander that abruptly shoots Tim after asking him if he loves his family and Earth. Yeah, that's a little weird. He deletes the data from the Codex before turning the gun on himself.
What is going on here?
This is honestly a great introduction. It immediately adds a lot of intrigue and is a great setup. We jump 200 years back into the role of Isaac. From there, our tortured engineer's journey continues into the hellscape of necromorphs 3 years after the destruction of Dead Space 2's marker. I said his journey, but this time around it really isn't his mission. Isaac has become a recluse, hiding from pursuers on Earth's moon's lunar colony. He's not really the man we left him as at the end of 2. He thinks he's done his part in this web of horrors and he just wishes to be done with it. I think we're supposed to be opposed to this lifestyle, but I honestly can't blame the guy. He destroyed 2 markers, put an end to the necromorph outbreak twice, and wishes to live a quiet life after seeing some of the most horrific sights a man could witness. In fact, the beginning of the game is a little jarring, no, not because it's a significant time jump from the prologue, but it feels like we're missing a lot of context right out of the gate. For instance, there is clearly some touchy nerves between Isaac and Ellie as a message plays emphasizing that Ellie is moving on from a relationship, mind you, that we have never seen. They went from people sharing a bond of trauma in the last game to an ex-couple in the opening of the new game. That's quite the jump, and I think it could have been done better. A couple minutes into the game, Isaac is ambushed in his apartment by 2 armed men, Robert Norton and John Carver, soldiers working for EarthGov, the government body responsible for the second game's catastrophe and the torture of Isaac himself. His hesitance to aid them in their mission is completely valid. That is until Robert Norton divulges the information that Ellie, his ex, is aiding them in an attempt to stop the markers, but has since gone dark. Turns out that their timing is impeccable, as the zealous cult of Unitology, now going by the name of The Circle, converges on them to put the engineer down, dubbing him the Marker Killer. He's a threat to their plans because he's the only one that has actually been able to destroy these artifacts so far. During our escape, we have the pleasure of running into Danik, the Circle's stoic, did I say stoic? I meant generic leader.
Jesus Christ, that's
Elton John.
I mean, he looks like the least threatening man in the entire game. It also doesn't help that he just has nothing interesting to say. He spouts philosophical dialogue vocalizing that the markers will make us more than we are and we need to join the cycle of rebirth. I honestly don't know how anyone could look at the afflictions the marker causes and then think that there's a good side to something so vile. But hey, we need an antagonist here. He's just not very believable and extremely shallow as far as villains go. He explains to us that he has been sabotaging marker test sites on all of the major colonies by dismantling the casing that kept the marker's electromagnetic fields at bay from the general populace. He does this very thing in front of our eyes as the marker is activated, unleashing horror across the densely populated colony. Something I don't get is, how is Danik able to freely avoid the influence of the marker despite playing a role in several necromorph outbreaks? Isaac can because he has a way of circumventing these intrusions because he severed the link when he destroyed the marker in Dead Space 2. What makes Danik so special? As we fight through Unitologist soldiers and make our way to Norton's ship, Norton blatantly explains that his task force is the remaining remnants of a political body and military force of EarthGov. According to him, the staggering number of attacks mounted towards them across colonies by the cult have rendered them immobilized.
Huh?
You're telling me the main governing body surrounding Earth and associated colonies has fallen to a cult? I know the reaches were extensive, even to the point of having Unitologists in the ranks of EarthGov, but you can't tell me every member of the church was on board with the violence and slaughter which they would have to endure. This line just seems like a slap in the face and a way to quickly interpret the high stakes to the player. It's so abruptly dropped and just never talked about again. That really reminds me of Alien Resurrection when the galaxy's largest corporation, Weyland-Yutani, is said to be bought out by Walmart.
Oh, they went under decades ago, get him in way before your time. Bought out by Walmart.
That just doesn't make any sense, I'm sorry. I guess that explains why the cult is able to have an advertisement for their movement on a commercialized craft in the game's opening. Allowing a well-known terrorist organization to put a localized info ad on a craft seems like a bit of a stretch. I mean, it looks cool, but what? Anyway, after a Michael Bay-esque escape, the group is well underway to Ellie's last known location, which just so happens to be the planet from the game's opening, Tau Volantis. I gotta admit, that name is heckin' awesome. Upon exiting the jump, the Eudora is met with a ship graveyard and magnetic mines that engage the Eudora and scuttle the ship relatively quickly. The crew is able to escape intact except for this guy, meeting up at a nearby station, the CMS Roanoke. Ellie meets with the crew upon boarding, where we get our first awkward interaction between the ex-lovers. Norton embraces Ellie with passion while Isaac just watches. Ugh. We're informed by Ellie that the very ship we inhabit holds the secrets to the markers in the Admiral's quarters. The writing on the wall, literally, spells a diagram for an alien machine that controls the markers, supposedly, quote unquote. Also, Carver shows up for some reason if you aren't playing co-op, which I didn't, so he just kind of shows up here. From there, Ellie deduces that Tau Volantis must be the marker homeworld, and as such, tasks us with repairing and assembling a shuttle that sits in a neighboring vessel so we can enter Tau Volantis' atmosphere. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, Isaac just kind of plays the role of an errand boy the entire game, despite Ellie's persistence that they need him. I don't think the mission needs him as much as Ellie does. While we fix up this retro-looking shuttle, it does actually look really cool. We get to listen to Norton's constant pleas to leave the mission behind and return home. My guy, have you seen what the necromorphs can do? You're telling me you forced us to tag along on this mission just to have us turn back around and go home. Safe to say, Ellie ain't falling for that spineless puppy BS. That's right, Roberto, get absolutely stomped on. With the shuttle prepped for planetary entry, we take the helm with our hard-to-get X. Whoa, hold up. Just gotta tweak some things here, put that in there. Perfect, alright, now we're ready to go. Whew, that was a close one. Our descent begins. Wait, did he just make a Star Wars reference?
Here's where the fun begins.
Entry into the planet's harsh storm-riddled climate quickly dooms the small vessel as a blizzard clouds our vision and the mountainous rocky terrain damages the shuttle infrastructure, tearing the ship in half. In some odd miracle, Isaac comes to in the cold after an undisclosed amount of time. His suit helmet is busted, exposing him to the harsh elements. He sets off in search of the others while maintaining warmth around crashed shuttle pieces. Not far off is the shuttle's other half with a message awaiting for Isaac from Ellie, informing him to follow the trail left by flares. Doing this leads us right to an encounter with a hulking creature known as the Snow Beast. It impacts with Isaac, tossing him off a snowy cliffside, which conveniently lands him right where he needs to be. Seriously though, I know this is a game about aliens and such, but how is this guy's back not broken after following several stories? Staying the course leads us to small way stations where we meet one of the shuttle survivors, Austin Buckle. Yeah, he's not doing too good, and he says that he chose to stay behind when they outnumbered the amount of available snowsuits, and the sound coming from the basement warned them to opt out of trying to look for more. What a great group of people that were helping out here. They wouldn't even go into the basement to see if they could find a suit for this guy. They just left him to die. Isaac fixes the broken elevator with relative ease, mind you, and makes his way into the basement to get himself a snowsuit. Seriously, they didn't even try to help this guy. What a bunch of douches. Anyway, the basement leads to one of the most terrifying moments in the entire game.
Oh, hell no!
I got the heebie-jeebies from that. After going through an elaborately mechanical basement with puzzles, a snowsuit becomes available, allowing Isaac to trek on the planet's harsh exterior. Doing this provides some eye candy via the grand landscapes in the background. It just looks so beautiful. Ellie, Norton, Carver, and Santos are held up in an archaeological outpost, but before we can gain access, the snow beast from earlier has returned to finish the job that it started. Luckily, it's not much of a threat and it runs off before we can finish it. Yeah, that happens about 3 times during the game. Isaac regrouping with the team opens up the second awkward interaction with the now lover and ex-lover.
Yeah, maybe we should give you two some time alone, huh?
What the hell does that mean?
It means for someone who's in the past, you're awfully glad to see him.
We need...
Oh, seriously, this guy wears his insecurity on his sleeve. Why did they inject this love triangle into the game, man? Thankfully, the topic quickly changes directions as Santos, a researcher part of Ellie's team, informs the group that she has an idea of where to find the machine from the Admiral's scribblings on the Roanoke. The facility, of course, is at the far end of the complex, requiring another significant trek, riddled with necromorphs that are laying dormant under the snow. Santos' lead uncovers a giant frozen creature dubbed the Nexus by the SCAF movement all those years ago. Though all of their electronic data was purged in the cover-up attempt at the start of the game, handwritten documentation is still widely available, sourcing the signal for the machine from active nerve cells inside of this giant beast. As engineers do, the Zachman must power up a generator that'll help him drop into the colossal advanced necromorph in hopes of retrieving data from these sacks inside the beast. Before we do that though, we gotta do another fetch quest to find the requisite parts for a gun that will help us disrupt these nervy sacks. During the part retrieval, Isaac stumbles onto an old SCAF bunker that actually provides us with some insight into what actually happened at the start of the game. Much like the long-lost race before them, the SCAF soldiers encountered the necromorphs, lost containment preceding their best efforts to keep them at bay. With the severity of the forthcoming events, a search and destroy operation was put into place, ensuring all evidence and everyone associated with the mission would be destroyed so nobody would ever know what horrors Tal Volantis holds. This is actually a really grim divulgence of information and a superb addition to this bleak lore. Oh, also Isaac has another run-in with the Snow Beast. Don't worry Isaac, it won't be the last. Anyway, proceeding to build this weapon, Isaac's best friend assumes the role of dropping him into the potentially highly dangerous closed-off space with no way out other than the cage controller. Who really thought this was a good idea? Anyway, narrowly escaping certain death once again, Santos is able to pinpoint an exact location of the machine deep below the planet's surface with an access point at the top of a nearby mountain. Norton lifts us out of the beast, surprisingly, lending our ears to more cringy dialogue between these two lovers.
And Ellie,
Yeah.
I love you. You know that, right?
What? Yeah.
God, I know some people hate The Office because they find it too cringy, but like, this is my office for those people. He promises Ellie he'll keep us safe, but immediately leaves us in a locked cage spouting about how he's gonna take back control of the mission and save his lover by abandoning the mission. First of all, we never took control of the mission. I don't know where he's getting this. We literally have been ordered around from the second we've gotten here. And secondly, is this man so stupid he thinks he's going to convince anyone to leave with him, especially Ellie after she's devoted everything to this journey. Running to catch up with the rest of the group after escaping these confines finds Isaac in the hands of the man that has been looking for him. Danik, the circle guy, the circle man, the leader, Elton John. Big twist here, but Norton made a deal with Danik to hand over Isaac in exchange for safe passage back to Earth with, you guessed it, Ellie! Surprise, surprise though, big bad guy doesn't keep his word and wants to off everybody.
Gov's ongoing
He's
research
monologuing
liberating
again.
the markers from those profane testing facilities.
3 hours later.
Jesus, spares the bullshit.
First useful thing Carver has done this entire game so far. The funny thing about this exchange is, despite Norton's lack of integrity, Isaac still offers himself in exchange for everyone else's freedom. This is supposed to be a contrast between characters. It's just funny because there is no comparison between the engineer and Norton. He's a one-dimensional crybaby insecure about his relationship. He's completely unattached to the situation around him. Isaac wrangles himself out of captivity, forcing Danik to flee and a gunfight to follow. Turns out that the Nexus did not like all that poking and prodding, so it awakes from a 200-year hibernation hungrier than ever, attempting to devour us. After a really great boss fight, the Nexus falls. We actually get sucked into this guy's stomach and have to destroy clusters. It's effing awesome. The Nexus spits Isaac out and Norton takes advantage of this situation to literally kick Isaac when he's down, going on a tangent about how Isaac is solely responsible for the mission's shortcomings. He wants to kill him basically, however we're the main protagonist so we get the upper hand. Finally, Isaac shoots him in self-defense when good old Roberto attempts to not only shoot Isaac but Carver when he intervenes. Anyway, he's finally dead. Thank you so much. We can finally move on with her lives.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
A short trek up the snowy path leads us to an awaiting Ellie. Like, they didn't just hear the giant insectoid creature trying to devour us? What? Isaac admits to killing Norton in self-defense, a statement that is backed by Carver.
Isaac did what he had to do to save the mission.
Thanks, buddy. She's upset and becomes avoidant, but really, like, she was clearly just using the man because Clark wanted nothing to do with the mission initially. Carver has a blunt exchange with Santos right after this where she exclaims that she can't keep doing this because she's being torn apart by all the people that are dying around her. To which Carver responds,
"Then we leave you behind."
My man has barely said anything this entire game and he's straight up a savage. Only thing to do is continue the mission, which involves scaling large cliff sides with grapple equipment. Yeah, this becomes a pretty overused gimmicky feature even after reaching the mountaintop. The rest of the group is stranded at the bottom due to falling debris, so get this, it's up to Isaac, an engineer, right? To find a lift, fix it, and bring everyone up. Crazy, I know. Also, Ellie gets over Norton's death really quickly, like,
I had to go find someone else to help me, and now he's dead.
2 seconds later.
Isaac, just be careful. I don't need to lose both you and Robert in the same day.
Another point that proves to me that she was just using the man. Upon getting the lift fixed, the elevator is brought up to the cliffside just in time for the snow beast to show up for the third time, attacking the lift before Santos can make it to solid ground. This attack just so happens to put the entire cliffside in jeopardy. Without hesitation, my man Carver releases the lift, sending Santos and the snow beast plummeting below, inadvertently knocking Isaac off the ledge as well. He falls a considerable distance, but he's okay somehow. Look at us go. The final fight with this annoying reused boss ends it once and for all by ripping it in half with harpoon equipment. God, I cannot tell you how glorious this was to watch. You have no idea.
Yes! Hell yeah!
Anyway, one more cliffside to scale and boom, we made it. The Rosetta research station holds the remaining secrets we need to put our plan into action. Ellie finds a research lab with ice slabs she believes are key fragments for the machine within the planet that will unlock this codex. Of course, in typical game fashion, some slabs are missing, sending Isaac on a search across the complex spanning multiple buildings. Once the busy work is done, a small puzzle ensues, putting the key fragments into the appropriate order. I actually really liked this puzzle. I thought it was really good. Once Rosetta is assembled, it's noted that Rosetta is in fact an alien.
Rosetta's an alien.
What? What does that mean?
Well, duh, I mean, how could you look at that and not think it's an alien? Am I the only one that knew it was an alien? It was a native to the planet that was used to unlock the codex through its genetics, once again, 200 years ago. A revelation is disclosed through some sort of telepathic flashback showing Isaac exactly what happened to the alien race a millennia ago. They, like humanity, found these markers and suffered necromorph outbreaks, but their invasion had spread farther than any of Isaac's previous outings. Without destroying the marker in time, the necromorphs were able to begin their final form known as the Convergence. an act that forms any and all necrotic tissue into a brethren moon, a planetoid hive mind that consumes entire planets and can even communicate with sister moons of the same kind. In an attempt to stop convergence from happening, the Aquatic Alien Society built a machine to flash freeze the planet and nearby moon to halt the Brethren moon's formation, thus rendering what remained of the species totally extinct. Though the moon was frozen, the marker signal still originates from this half-formed planetoid being. The preconceived notions about the end goal are completely thrown a curveball. The goal isn't to shut the machine down, as doing so would result in the continuation of convergence. I love these deep additions to the lore. I think they add a lot to something that previously lacked context.
Oh my god, the moon. The moon is the source of the marker signal, not the machine.
So like, this next part really bothers me. After this revelation, Isaac stands up to find Danik and his goons holding Carver and Ellie at gunpoint. How the heck did this happen? Did they all have the vision too? If not, there's only one way into the room, so how could they have gained the upper hand? I guess they thought this was the only way to continue to up the stakes? Danik, now in control of the fully loaded codex, heads into the mines to deactivate the machine. A tussle with his men leaves the lab filling with gas as Isaac and Carver make it out just in time. However, Ellie is cut off by the gas and we are forced to leave her behind. The engineer's only reason for being here is now dead, so it's safe to say he's pretty pissed and uses that momentum of anger to pursue Danik below the surface.
Where'd he go?
Where'd he go? I don't know!
Daddy, chill.
We keep the pace with Danik by rappelling down the elevator shaft, finally arriving at the machine. It's an absolutely massive metropolis-sized device, which makes sense. Something capable of flash freezing an entire planet's gotta be at least a little big, right? An audio recording divulges the machine's true nature. It wasn't just meant to flash freeze the planet, but pull the Brethren moon into Tau Volantis, completely destroying both. The Volantians ran out of time before the final form of the machine could be configured. Upon arriving, Isaac and Carver share a heart-to-heart that comes out of nowhere. He talks about the morality of being a good man and the decisions he has made regarding his family and others around him. It's a little too late in the story for anyone to actually care about anything this man is saying. These two have barely spoken, but are close enough to share this moment? I don't buy it.
Shut up, Carver. You're a good man.
How do you know he's a good guy, Isaac? Tell me. From here, the end goal finally becomes clear. Retrieve the codex from Elton John, or Circle Guy Danik, reconfigure the machine by interfacing with the alien technology, and activate the last step of the process using the machine. This is where the game gets really stupid, like really stupid. After some puzzle solving, we arrive at the machine's console, but surprise surprise, Ellie is alive and Danik is waiting for us with a gun to her head. Isaac actually shows some growth here. It's no longer just about Ellie. He sees the larger picture and is set on activating the machine regardless of the outcome of Ellie.
Isaac, what are you doing? You got a second chance.
If he turns off the machine, we're all dead.
That's not my problem here. My problem here is with Carver. He does a complete 180, nabs the codex from Isaac, and tosses it to Danik. This man has been strictly hellbent on completing this mission whatever the cost. He straight up sacrificed Santos and threatened to leave her behind just prior to her death. Now you're telling me he has this change of heart because he doesn't want Isaac to be without Ellie?
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Ironically, he's given the key to Danik to turn off the machine that will lead to the eventual annihilation of every human being in the galaxy. It would have made way more sense if Carver had been some unitologist spy, and even that's a massive leap. So Carver tosses Danik the key, making him completely vulnerable for like 10 seconds, okay? 10 seconds. Why are they just watching this happen? Kill him and turn the key back immediately.
Ugh, I can't even watch this without getting angry.
Isaac and Ellie share a goodbye, I guess, as she escapes on Danik's shuttle, leaving Isaac to destroy the hive mind and bring the moon crashing down into the planet below.
Don't come back for me. We both know I'm not going home. Go!
We catch up with Ellie orbiting the planet trying to contact Isaac. Surprise, surprise, she doesn't get any signal from him. but then she spouts off about how the marker signal seems to have fallen silent before jumping into slip space and returning to Earth.
The marker signal. It's gone too. Isaac, you did it!
Oh, God. But wait, there's more. Isaac isn't dead. Haha, we knew that, right? We knew that at the end of the end credits. He's not dead. So anyway, we get a DLC called Awakened.
This feels a lot like hell.
I'm not going to get too into this DLC, but essentially Carver and Isaac awake to find that they survived the unsurvivable. During the ending of the main story, the awakened Brethren moon orbiting Tau Volantis was able to communicate with the other moons, calling them to Earth's location. Their mission revolves around fixing a Unitologist ship and fleeing the system back to Earth in order to warn them of the coming invasion. They are all too late, as when they jump back to Earth, the moons converge on Earth, and it ends. Wow, what an ending. Wow, that's awesome. Good job, EA. Also, when we jump back to Earth, Carver has this insistence on contacting EarthGov, even though Norton said in the main story that EarthGov has been completely wiped out.
Who the hell are you guys? EarthGov's last battalion. Name's Norton. Captain Robert Norton. Sergeant John Carver.
Last battalion, what do you mean?
Last means last, genius, as in no more left.
So, I guess that's a plot hole. Look, this is the most god-awful ending. I don't even care if it's the canon ending or not. Why on God's green earth would they release another story DLC after the main ending?
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.
I don't even care much for the original ending, but at least it concludes the narrative and puts an end to the threat that we have been fighting for half a decade. The story expansion completely undoes everything. It feels like a slap in the face. No, it is a slap in the face. Look, the game's main narrative isn't horrible, okay? It's kind of horrible, but the story beats and twists it adds to the extensive lore are clever. It consistently adds impactful twists, which are gradually uncovered via the game's odd pacing. However, the characters and subplots leave a lot to be desired. I'd go as far as to say that the Forced Twilight subplot severely takes away from the overall experience. It undermines moments that should be shrouded in mystery and intrigue. No, instead Norton has to cry that Isaac is going to steal his woman. Like, give me a break. Making this game with a focus on co-op really ruined any chance of getting a complete understanding of certain characters. If you play co-op, Carver actually has a chance to develop as a character. It's not anything remarkable, but we understand him a little more. If you play single player, which let's be honest, many people did, he's more shallow than a puddle of water, turning up at points that just don't even make any sense.
Bruh.
The characters don't remain consistent in their actions and dialogue either. Santos has a flip show when she's informed that Norton sold out the entire crew because he's dead, but she didn't have a problem with Austin's death when they landed on the planet.
Now there are only 4 of us left. I can't do this.
Ellie goes from backing Norton to quickly getting over his death mere moments later. Carver flips a switch at the end of the game, giving Danik exactly what he wants after going through hell to stop him. It's a highly unbelievable set of circumstances that refuses to play by his own rules for the sake of ending the series. It doesn't help that Dead Space 3 takes on a much wider, more ambitious storyline, contrasting the predecessors' more confined personal tales of tragedy and overcoming insurmountable odds. This isn't even really Isaac's story anymore. He's thrusted into this by Ellie and follows her mission to completion. The story is a mess, and it's a casualty caused by EA's involvement to push more sales. Dead Space 3's gameplay has a totally different feel this time around, and I think a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this. Yes, the main fundamentals remain sound, like the shooting with telekinesis and stasis remaining a pivotal part of combat and puzzle solving. However, Visceral moved away from their horror focus and chased a fast-paced action approach, forcing a lot of what made those last 2 games so great to change. The diverse range of ammo types was scrapped, pushing in a universal ammo system to the game's new weapon crafting. Stasis and its recharge was tweaked because players would actually need to utilize this a lot more to combat the results of increasing the necromorph's speed. And yeah, they're speedy boys.
That Gotcha, bitch!
Encounters with the necromorphs became increasingly more frequent as the game progressed to back the game's emphasis on excessive Michael Bay level action. The claustrophobic corridors that left you with some mystery of where the monsters would emerge from are few and far between. The first 7 chapters or so are spent around Tal Volantis' orbit. This is probably the best part of the game, honestly. You get the series' trademark tight corridors and ship exploration, and I think that's awesome. The horror is lacking a little bit, but it's the closest thing we get to those previous games. Fighting the necromorphs on the snow-capped surface starts out alright, but when you realize it's a lot of what you'll be doing, it just kinda gets old. They can only come from 2 ways, in front of you or behind you, and it's relatively easy to see them in the broad daylight and in the snow. They can't really blend in like they could in the last set of games. When you aren't fighting necromorphs, you'll be occasionally dispatching groups of circle soldiers. I actually didn't mind fighting these soldiers. I know a lot of people had a problem with this, but I thought it was engaging for the most part, and it helped shake up the increasing amounts of necromorphs you'll be dispatching. The AI isn't smart by any means. A crouch button was added in for these engagements, but you really don't need it. They provide you with enough standing cover. I don't even know why they implemented a crouch button. I could see having a crouch button if they wanted to incorporate it into the game's environmental navigation, but they don't, so you just never need to use it. Another mechanic you never use outside of one occasion is stealth, which sucks because this moment is awesome. Not long after landing on the planet, Isaac searches a basement, like I was talking about before with Austin Buckle. It's riddled with these guys. An audio log indicates before you enter this area that you can distract them by throwing objects. That's really cool because it didn't have anything like these in the other games, and these guys are freaking skinwalkers. They're creepy as heck. I don't want them touching me. I wish there were more moments like this and with these guys. I can't help but feel that these were remnants of the game Visceral wanted to make, as opposed to the one EA wanted them to make. I haven't even mentioned the new dodge mechanic that seems to only work like half the time. It's not necessarily a bad idea to have it in a game like this because the enemies are so up in your face, like they're trying to sell me car insurance.
We've been trying to contact you regarding your car's extended warranty.
But at the same time, Isaac is just a middle-aged guy with a creative mind. He's not a soldier. He looks kind of silly just deking all over the place. I'll admit it was useful at times, but I don't think it really needed to be here at all. Now, power nodes were useful in previous games with helping unlock upgrades for guns and your rig, but these power nodes were stripped here in favor of circuit boards and a scrap mechanic that would add a grind into the game to incentivize people to spend money on the various microtransactions. Of course, it's an EA game, so of course they had microtransactions. What do you do in EA? With scrap, you could upgrade items, craft resources, and new crazy guns. The circuits added passive bonuses to your firearms. Look, I really don't mind the scrap system for its role in weapon crafting. I actually think it's a genius idea that just missed proper testing. You can make some incredibly overpowered guns, but also make some incredibly useless ones. But having to use these bots to seek out additional scrap ruins the pace, because you have to go out of your way to find all these items. You have to place the robot down and wait for it to do its thing. It has an artificial timer on it of 10 minutes to incentivize you again to use the microtransactions. So you can't just put a robot down and then go back to your bench and have those resources available. No, you gotta wait 10 minutes before any of those items will be transferred to the bench for your use. Some upgrade paths are also just useless, like, for example, the player can upgrade Isaac's air capacity, but you get a lot of air to start the game off with, but also you never need air after the first 3 hours. Once you land on Tal Volantis, you actually never have another zero gravity moment, so you just don't need the air at all. Another big problem I have with the game is that they never balance the gameplay experience for solo players, which it's a Dead Space game that's primarily a solo player franchise, but okay. The same excessive number of enemies will be present with or without a buddy, albeit with a little bit less health. Either way, halfway through the game, these confrontations started feeling more like a chore than anything. The game would constantly throw enemies at me that had no trouble getting up close to me and dealing severe damage. It felt like Isaac was just left at a severe disadvantage without Carver, which is hilarious when, as I said before, Dead Space was created with a single player experience at the forefront. Co-op was added for marketing alone, and it's just awful. Now, I don't know if this is a problem for anyone else or if anyone else noticed this, but for me, a big problem is that a lot of these gameplay scenarios feel artificial. In Dead Space 1 and 2, each sequence feels grounded in that particular space like a giant trash compactor. In fact, in Dead Space 1, you have to mount a defense weapon system built to destroy incoming debris before the space rocks can damage the hull of the Ishimura. It just so happens that the system which runs this gun is off, forcing Isaac to helmet while it's brought back online. Yes, it's a video gaming mechanic, but it grounds this item in the world like it's a tangible thing. Now just look at this section in the third game. 2 turrets are placed at the back of the room with explosive barrels in groups. This looks like a tropey action set piece before it even begins, like something you'd see in the Fast and the Furious. In this section, Isaac must clear gears responsible for opening a shuttle launch door. You gotta shoot the red barrels in time while handling necromorphs that land right in front of you. They don't pose any threat. It just makes that suspension of disbelief even harder to maintain. I can see how people who prefer action over a slower burn could enjoy the gameplay for what it is, but it does not surpass previous entries, even with their additions to modernize it further. So I was actually surprised about this aspect of the game, and that's presentation, because Dead Space 3's presentation is kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The overall texture work is great for the most part, environments look grungy, enemies showcase gruesome builds, and the backdrops will make you stop and admire them. Look at this snow-capped mountain in the background with that powerful orange casting around it. It's just so beautiful. Colossal creatures are frozen in the distance, standing stiff, and it just looks awesome as they showcase their true scale. The larger scale also mirrors its Uncharted-like gameplay scenarios. The dynamic lighting and shadow casting works great in what few tense moments there are in tighter spaces. Even without the horror elements, these interior spaces look lived in and they look good. Dead Space 3 also has environmental diversity, though at times it feels like you're never gonna see the end of the snow surface. It opens fighting through a colony, then it transitions to space and ship exploration before inevitably crash landing on Tavalantis, which leads to snowy landscapes, ancient buildings, and later an alien city soaked in greens. Whereas previous games took place in one setting exclusively, this game has the advantage of multiple environments and 2 planets. Now the team clearly had the budget to achieve what they wanted to visually. There is a jarring problem when it comes to faces of its characters though. Ellie seems to have gotten the worst treatment, but everyone is kind of a victim here, like Barbie doll victim or swimming in Vaseline too long victims, I don't know. The small details are just missing and the characters look like their skin is made out of plastic. I know people's skin has a natural sheen to it because of the oils we secrete, but it's just overly noticeable here. They also seemed like they tried to make Ellie more conventionally attractive, but she just kind of looks like she got hit in the forehead really hard and she's derpy. I know she has a glass eye, but she's going cross-eyed the entire game. Carver looks strange as well, like he looks more like concept art than a real human being. Like, I don't know, like a pitbull mixed with a... I don't know. Creature design is all great, like especially these guys, even if they sound like the fastest reader in the world. Some designs have carried over with a new coat of paint, like the common infected. The stalkers look exactly the same as they did in Dead Space 2, but they work great. Of course, there are new welcomed additions, but none of them really shake up the gameplay formula, they all just rush you immediately. This is a big thing for me. I love audio in games, and audio is about what people would expect from the previous entries. Environmental sound design is great, it has a significant amount of depth. The voice is well done with emotions conveyed appropriately. You can hear the visible pain in some of Isaac's voice lines, especially when he's around Ellie.
The world is ending and all you can think about is us?
Damn right. I never gave up on you.
Oh no, you gave up on the world.
I paid my dues. Or don't you think I'm fucked up enough already?
All the sci-fi mechanical parts like doors and consoles and elevators, they all have great audio design. You can hear rusty gears turning when doors are opening, the elevator doors here are scraping, and the consoles booting up after prolonged absence of use is good. A lot of sound design was pulled straight from Dead Space 2 and placed here, but hey, what ain't broke, don't fix. But it does kind of seem weird that technology from 200 years prior would mirror and sound like tech of today, but that's just a nitpick, it doesn't really matter. Nothing in the OST really stood out to me. I usually like to go through OSTs on Spotify when I'm looking into games, and nothing really grabbed my eye. There's a few tracks that are interesting in the game's opening, but a lot of it seemed like a generic action movie score with some sci-fi tones. Not really my cup of tea, but some people may really enjoy it. like everything, it's on Spotify. Look, I gotta wrap it up here, and Dead Space 3 is not the game myself and many other fans wanted. The lore it added to the universe was intriguing, I'll admit, and it fit well into the established lore while upping the stakes significantly. Visceral clearly wanted this series to go out with a bang, which is mind-boggling when they undid the original ending of the game by selling players another ending with DLC that undoes everything Isaac and friends have been put through. The pacing in the original campaign is rough with a ton of fetch quests as Isaac plays errand boy, despite Ellie's insistence that they actually need him. Add in the god-awful love triangle and it just weighs down the entire experience. There are some puzzling gameplay elements with underutilized features put in place by trying to modernize the series and add co-op, a mode that hinders the solo experience even when they were saying that it didn't. It does. Look, co-op is fun, because co-op makes every game fun, but it takes away from any tension that they even tried to stir up. It feels totally out of place in a single player driven series. The main gameplay is fun for most of its adventure, but the consistent number of enemies that the game throws at you starts bogging down the experience. Weapon experimentation was a lot of fun, but it needed more work. It just kind of lost its focus on what made the series amazing in the first place. It's not uncommon for major IPs to meet this fate over time, but it's unfortunate. Anyway guys, that's gonna wrap up this video. This is my retrospective of Dead Space. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree. I do have a lot of controversial takes, but at the end of the day, it's all subjective. This is just how I viewed the game. If you like the content, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and peace out.